Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is Stillness of the Soul. And the idea is the comparison of the stillness of the soul to the movement of the body. Now, excuse me. Okay. All right, guys. So the title is on stillness of the soul, and pretty much the whole title was inspired out of my observation of though if right now we kind of move to observe phenomena as human beings, but if we were to observe movement, what would that mean about the one observing the movement? So what I mean by that is like if there's an I've written it here, if there's an awareness beyond movement, then that awareness cannot be defined by the movement. So, pretty much, we are creatures in space. We are some sort of manifest physical creature, and there's space all around us. And so, we have pretty much two crossroads of movement. Either we're going towards the physical evolution, which is an endless infinite endurance game, pretty much stay as long as we can before extinction comes by. And in regards to the space, is comprehending the mysteries of the mind, which could totally reveal a new paradigm or way of approach to the body. So when I want to speak about the stillness of the soul of stillness, it's pretty much attention's identification to where it moves to if it moves and to where it is before it moves. There's a quote by the Sufi mystic poet, which was always a curiosity for me. I was always wondering about it. And he would say, silence is the language of God and all else is poor translation. And when you look at the world, human beings are trying to use language. We're trying to use a complex method of symbol attribution to comprehend what's going on, not realizing that we are imposing the language in the space. That means if there was a moment before language, language is like sunglasses. That means if we take them off, we see how life is as it is. But if we have it on, we are seeing life as it is, but with a different tint. You know, little did I know that in my youth, when I would be very noisy, people would, in some sense, say, like, keep it down, you know. And really later on, you realize that the world is filled with noise. And every person is on the ship of a different noise. That means on some level, like literally an idea appears behind your eyes. It's just something that's a phenomenon in your awareness. Then when you act upon it, or when you notice it and do something, trust it, or to some degree, it externalizes. It's kind of like, how do you trust your hand to grab a cup from the cupboard? How do you trust your hand? How do you trust your hand to get a glass of water? Do you see? It's like instantaneous. So it's kind of hilarious. Human beings are freaking out in regards to unknown phenomena, and then but once they know it, they don't freak out anymore. So we can say fear is just the initial response to seeing something new. And once you see it, you transform, technically. There's this very lovely Zen story. In this Zen story, there's pretty much two imperial guards, like palace guards. And they are standing, you know, guarding these palace doors, and there's no war, and every day they're just standing there. And there's this flagpole, and it's windy, and the flag's moving in the wind. And one of the palace guards looks at the other one and says, "Hey, man, you see that yeah, that flagpole, that flag?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I see it." And he's like, "It's not the flag that's moving; it's the wind that's moving." Or sorry, it's the other way around. The guy says it's the flag is moving, the wind's not moving. And then the other person's like, "What do you mean, man? No, the flag's moving because of the wind." So they can't tell a flag on a windy day. Is it the wind moving or the flag moving? Do you see that simple question is very key for human beings and their future of wondering whether they're in a simulation or reality? A Zen koan of the highest forms has found these imperial guards. They, in some sense, to their surprise, notice that there's a sage, this very realized, liberated sage who just rarely is coming down from the mountains, and it's right there. They both run up to him and they're like, "Wise sir, please tell us what is moving, the wind or the flag?" They pretty much tell him the story, and the sage looks at him and says, "It's neither the flag moving or the wind moving." The sage tells them the mind is moving. Your mind is moving first before the phenomena of the outer realm, if the phenomena of the outer realm has a meaning to you. So anyways, it's pretty much like certain traditions taking the person towards stillness as a sort of self-inquiry, and certain traditions taking people to communication and more advanced activity. For me, I noticed the yogis had already kind of explained one side of the spectrum. Any person familiar with yogic thought is also familiar with how you have to kind of let go of what you want out of any process, pretty much, and just be there. Like there's a thing about meditation where it's not even meditation. You're not doing it to feel good or anything. You're just a creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere choosing to sit down, and then as your mind, after 10 to 20 minutes, literally, like I'm telling you, just sit down for 10 to 20 minutes, and don't care. Just watch it. If a thought comes by, watch it. And then after that 20 minutes, you'll find yourself in a strange stillness. And then once you become familiar with that stillness, then you, in some sense, are like the space of your moment before what moves in the space. Sometimes your senses really become extreme. So I feel that when the person, here's the thing, imagine there's a sphere around you, and that sphere is your moment of being, and you're in the center of the sphere. Okay? So it's kind of like when you think you're in the center of the sphere, the sphere is moving you. When you are the sphere, you're moving its contents. So pretty much there are states on this planet where the human being feels he's giving meaning to the world, and there's moments where the world is giving meaning to the human being. Now more than ever, there's a command that it's like, do you know how many people are just enduring through this condition of life, not realizing that it is up to them to look at what's going on? It has always been like that. It's kind of like the art of caring for sight's simple presence has kind of diminished. Back in the day, simple stuff was okay. But as the world became complex, that simplicity had a choice to make. I have given it my own shot and attempted to see if I can come up with a model that explains human conscious activity, or the parameters for it at least. That means sometimes when you can't get access to the concept, you look at the context. Okay, or sometimes when you can't get access to the context, you get access to the concept. Like all those people who have visions for the future, that's the context to, or like the subtext to your activity. That means literally your motivation. That's a good question to wonder, what is motivation before you want to get really motivated. Because if this intelligence of ours is like a vehicle, then we are responsible to pilot it. If this is intelligence of ours is not a vehicle, then we can have no choice than to just be the vehicle. That means it's kind of a weird situation where after a long time, a creature evolved to a thought to itself. Now, stillness, it makes the ripples on the pond where thoughts arise, those thoughts are ripples, imagine. These ponds become settled, and you'll notice this through listening. So there was a time in my life, guys, I didn't like to listen. I'm serious, I didn't like to listen. People would come and say something, and I'm just like, who are you? I didn't like to listen. But then I was kind of blessed to have a friend where me and his older brother and him, in some sense, this was years ago. We just went for this camping trip, you know. And when we went for the camping trip, it was a very like short kind of 1 day camping trip or something. And there we were sitting around the fire after getting super tired setting up the tents and whatnot. And then we're around the fire, and I noticed that my friend's older brother, who in some sense he was driving us, I don't know how to say it. He said something where he said, "You won't believe how much you can learn by just listening. That was the, I think that was, I don't know if that was the exact wording, but it was an idea like that. And that sentence, it's like, have you ever had a moment in your life where someone said something where it wasn't an idea what they said? It was literally like, it was something. You know what I mean? So listening is an incredible supernatural activity. It's like, if matter naturally has no personality, then it's super unnatural that somehow electrons feel they're a person right now. An atomic existence is identifying with its personhood. Because I don't have an atomic experience. I don't experience my day as an atom. I experience myself as a human being. But when we look at the body, we see these particles everywhere. So in some sense, I'm telling you, it's its existence in different dimensions in accordance to the first dimension that we semi-explored. I am telling you, there is so much of this world left. Imagine all the stories that your mind has heard so far. And imagine how in the future there will be the movements of the unfathomable. That means for me, it was very clear, even from like my youth, that in some sense, like this world just goes on. This world is legit like a film. It's like a film where you're the actor, but you don't have any script. You just open your eyes. You're on set. You're on stage. You're in the moment. Cameras are rolling. That means consciousness is there. Do you see? And so it's a performance. Now, what I've understood is that most people they want to have an expectation for the performance, but I'm telling you that that stillness of the soul is a sort of void that is not a void where intelligence is less. It's a void where intelligence is not a shape. That means we are most likely attributeless, shapeless intelligence here. Call it whatever you like, but it doesn't have a shape because it's a field of activity. Now, what does that mean? That means particles moving in a field are noticing that it's a field. So it's kind of like when Voltaire, I always wondered, Voltaire has this quote where he says, if the concept of God wasn't there, it was necessary to create it. And I was like, Voltaire, this like French atheist philosopher, why in some sense he felt like it was necessary to create it. Then I realized because it's this pattern in history where something is singular, then it breaks apart, becomes multidimensional, then the multidimensional pieces become singular, then the singular breaks and into the multidimensional. So technically history is oscillating between different phases where human beings are looking at the sky and some of them are identifying with their inner realms, some of them are not. Back in the day, did you know in ancient Greece, Socrates, this very notable, famous philosopher in the West, that means we know him, Socrates, he got in trouble because he was talking about his own metaphysics back in the day. And people believed in the ancient gods, ancient Greek gods. So it's like there's some dude worshiping Apollo and Socrates is talking about a divinity that is more infused with the person. That means Socrates was trying to get the people at that time to where we are now. He was trying to contribute to the momentum of the free will. For me, I've had moments where I felt stillness. That stillness has taken me experientially out of ideology. That means in any moment where you are kind of either forced or going alongside change, um, you watch the change. Think of it this way: imagine everybody's changing in this world, and the issue is not change. The issue is like people are not aware they're changing. So imagine you wake up and we see physically your body is different. But what if during that time you were asleep, your mind was in some sense also had a speed, was moving in a certain way. I feel that we are not per se concepts. We are nodes of awareness for an organism that is inconceivable. I feel we are alive simultaneously in a field that can be considered the mind of this universal sector. So, what does that mean? That means right now, imagine I close my eyes and imagine a character, let's say, on like a parallel dimension of Earth, and this character is, let's say, I don't know, let's say gravity is different in this parallel dimension of Earth. So, in some sense, I'm kind of envisioning that character, which is that instant of my attention going on the thought. It's kind of like I'm saying we are the thoughts of higher dimensions. And by higher dimensions, I mean a relationship with the world that is particles moving, the field moving the particles rather than particles moving themselves in a field. Right now, the creature, like the human being, I find after leaving the actual jungle, upon entering the concrete jungle, began to develop two types of humanity. There was a humanity that identified with letting things be, and there was a humanity that identified with endlessly pursuing. That means sometimes when I've looked at my own kind of, let's say, stream of thought, I've noticed that it's as if like are the different brain hemispheres taking turns. Do you know what I mean? It's like we have this view that, of course, the frontal lobe is the center, not the center, but like the central activity, or how would I say it? Like our brain is an unknown instrument. The way we live can literally play a melody, a way of things happening that it's never seen before. That means sometimes when you ask advice, I've experienced this where you ask advice from people and they're actually very kind, like they're honest people. And they say, no, it can't. Like you ask about if something is possible and they say no. And then you realize that person, what is that person saying no to? How much they have looked at the problem. I had a totally different relationship with knowledge when my inner realms shifted from me. Act literally when I would speak, I would kind of see language in my inner realms. Then it became very image oriented, and then that image became kind of rhythmic, and that rhythm made me realize that it's just like how Right now, it's like your heart, you don't think about it, consciously, but it's just happening, it's beating. So there's so many systems in this world and in this kind of zone of manifestation. The mindset that wants to control meaning will never see it. The Sufis had this saying, they were like, if you only want to just use the sharpness of the intellect, it's like whipping a dead donkey to go faster. Because the intellect needs certainty, and certainty is a fixation in change. The stillness of the soul, I find it inevitably leads to contentment and dissolution of feeling that you kind of notice you are being before you do anything, and that sense of being is its own intelligence. Kind of how Krishnamurti says, "I am compassion with its own intelligence," or the Bhakti Yogi would the Bhakti Yogi's surrender of the illusion was in some sense like. Um, how can I tell you? It's strange, but there is a sort of yogic path of illumination where if you love existence, you cannot not see. It's weird. It's like your eyes are open to your dimension as much as you care for that dimension. It's just like imagine people. You look at people and you see unless you care, you don't engage really. Have you noticed that? And so for me, it's like I don't know. Sometimes I think we're oscillating again from different modes of a mode where it's like you're observing, you're letting life happen to you, and then there's a state where you're happening to life. So, anyways, this when I start to speak about anything, because language is a dualistic technology, inevitably the person is considering different accesses to the idea or to the moment. So right now, what I mean is that like right now, here, let me use myself as an example. Like Mr. Within is sitting in a room, and if I was to consider, I see that if my eyes are open, shape is there before choice. But when I close my eyes, it appears as space before choice. Do you see? Unless the image evokes. That means kind of like when you listen to someone speak, if you listen to someone speak a lot, inevitably you just see and you just hear in images. Like a way I remember things, if I have to remember, like, here's the thing, here's how a person can remember anything pretty much if it's important. You have to engage your inner realms with it. That means it's like one task is answering the question, but one task is keeping the question there to even be able to answer it. I don't know, guys. My view is this: there's stillness. What can I do about it? It's there. There's movement. What can I do about it? It's there. There's chaos. What can I do about it? It's there. There's order. What can I do about it? It's there. There's the known. What can I do about it? It's there. There's the unknown. What can I do about it? It's there. There's the finite. What can I do about it? It's there. There's the infinite. What can I do about it? It's there. And when I say it's there, it depends. For example, when I'm speaking to, for example, like how can I say it? Let's say when a shaman says like there's a presence in the room, but you see you and the shaman only there, aside from you, then it's a moment where it's like that's a presence in the inner realms. That means when you realize in front of your eyes life is a room, it looks like a room, it looks like the universe is in some sort of containment. Behind your eyes, you also get to a point where you're like, wait a minute, what if behind my eyes, my sense of a subjective self is in a world of its own? We cannot ignore how the human being is an expressive creature. Literally, if you don't move, you die on this planet. Like, that's the thing. So, in this movement, it's kind of like, what do you do when you're in a simulation? Well, you try to break it, or you reverse engineer out of it, or you, in some sense, you either free the self or the world, one of them. And that's the way out of this system, I think. That means if you love yourself but hate the world, you cannot literally leave this world. It's like let me tell you like this. Imagine life like the Buddhist view, the yogic view perceived it like this, guys. They perceived it that you were this transmigrating, attributeless, eternal vision that is endlessly opening its eyes in incarnations, right? And so they're kind of like, all right, what do we do with this highway of transmigrating souls, you know? And the view eventually becomes that is it a mass movement or is it one movement? Like right now, as I'm speaking to you, is this the whole brain active, or is this just a certain part of the brain more active than the rest, influencing the rest? So you see what I mean? There is a fascination that goes beyond the language we have, and when you find that fascination, you should better you should hold on to it. There's certain things in this life that literally, if you don't engage it when it happens, it doesn't happen. Very simple. If you don't care, it doesn't happen. But if you care, it happens. I found parallels in mysticism, guys, in a very unique way. For example, in Sufism, they had this pattern of behavior where the Sufis would say, "You gotta die before you die," and people were like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" You know, it was like, "What do you mean die before I die?" And they meant the idea that your attention is on. Your attention has to literally move differently if you want to see something else. Like, let me tell you this, guys. In my youth, I kind of, how can I tell you? I saw something chaotic and I got shocked into a paralysis. I couldn't move my body. I saw an event outside. I was inside a car, but I saw an event outside of a car that I froze. Now imagine that person was in that incident. I froze and I wondered why. Why is it that the change in the ecosystem, in the environment, causes the inner realm to prevent the body to maintain its efficiency? And it's too easy to just say it's fear. Like we need to study the mechanics. We need to open the hood of the engine of fear and see what it's made of. I've had this experience where I kind of like sit in a moment, either in nature or somewhere. I just sit. And I don't have much of a feeling. It's kind of like this idea where you start trusting your intuition on a micro level, and then as it animates on a macro level, then it becomes like, how can I say it? It's like the human being doesn't just think conceptually, guys. Like right now, as I'm speaking, there are some people who are in this world who they don't need words, for example, to comprehend. They're emotional creatures more. Everybody has emotions, but for example, their emotions maintain them. Do you see? So what I feel is that first of all, we all have different DNA. So on some way, impossible to compare intelligence or measure it. But on another level, we can measure alertness and wakefulness. In front of my eyes, the objective realm, the biological program, how the world is moving first. But when I close my eyes and the visual senses are kind of dormant for a second, there is like strangely a cloud of, imagine a black cloud, and this black cloud, in it, there is different images of light. That means I think the uniqueness of our design as creatures is that we think I think what it is it was pre-built in our design, and I think in the DNA, that when light enters the eyes of the human being, it hits and activates something. I feel light activates consciousness in matter, because if that consciousness to engage is to engage a world, there has to be something to see. So if we want to do something with our inner realms, there's two views. Either they don't exist, we can't do anything, it's just this, or if they exist, we have to find ways to expand the current position. And I think the most powerful force is an experiential one. That means if they say, is a written teaching or an oral teaching more powerful than the person experiencing the teaching, I would say the experience is definitely higher. That means for me, certain things, like they remain in a certain way where I have a certain level of certainty of it from my inner realms and from my outer realms. Do you know what that means? That means, like, for example, I'm looking at this computer in front of me. I see it. I physically see the computer. I don't see my eyes, but I see the computer, you know? That means very little, very, very few people think about their eyes when they look. It's kind of like you're looking through, you're not looking at it, you know? Like the kind of one way, like as if our sight is one-sided. It's like a flashlight on a wall. It's just something is expressing. Okay. So I see that this computer in front of me, I physically see it, my eyes are open, but how is it that I can imagine and that this computer suddenly hovering in the air? How can I imagine in my inner realms, I can imagine this computer hovering in the air? It's not, it's physically in front of me, it's not hovering, but in the inner realms, in regards to imagination, I'm observing it hover in the realms, and I can also visualize how the space where the computer is what underneath the computer, the space of the table looks like. So I'm saying the mind can take a little bit of sensory perception and then it infinitely stretch it. There's an unconditionalness. There is a freedom behind your eyes that in front of your eyes, that freedom doesn't exist in the same way. That means, you see, it's like, let's say somebody says a dark joke, a joke with a negative kind of imagery. Okay, so that dark joke, somebody, let's say they don't want to even laugh at it, but let's say they suddenly laugh. It's funny. Where is that laughter coming from? That laughter is coming from a being that is free to be anything. Isn't it strange that we kind of consider ourselves as a name, as a sort of shape, and also a backstory and history and all this, but on another level we're like, you have free will, you can do anything you want, you can be anything you want. So what is this? We are something, but we can also be anything. So I'm saying the free will is, we have, it is now time for the species to look at this ancient language like artifacts. It's like this great need to preserve technologies that are being lost. And I'm telling you, the future is going to be a behavioral language. There's going to be a resurfacing of a sort of stoic global community. I was about to say a stoic global communism. No, not communism, community. You know what I mean? We are using the mystery of the subjective realm to to consider the objective realms have meaning. Language is also an emptiness, guys. That means if we were honest as human beings and they asked us, where is your home? I can't say a location. I have to say empty space. Because even though we're living on matter, there is more space. And what's stranger is that there is space. Just the fact that, just think of this, guys. How fascinating is it? We are aware of space. We're aware of it, but if they tell you define space, you only define it as the absence of something that was there. So in some sense, the space where the Big Bang happened, it could have been that that space was full, and then it was emptied, and then it became full again. It's too mysterious. You see, it's so mysterious that you're like, even if there was a supernatural divine agency, that supernatural divine agency would also have to ask, how am I here? How am I God, for example? Do you know? It's as if like when God looks in the mirror, who does God see? That's the question. And that question is inconceivable. It's the evolution towards the inconceivable. Therefore, because nature is systematic and it is collective, it will till the end of time appear as if it already knows what it is. Just like how the seed of a tree is planted before, it's kind of, you're like, wait a minute, how is it that the human being, how is it that this human being, like a seed, doesn't know what to do? Like you plant a seed, the seed doesn't ask questions. The seed just grows, right? It just happens. But why is it that the human being is so keen on constantly finding purpose? Because he has separated himself from the meaning of nature. Therefore, unless he becomes responsible for emptiness, he will not experience anything. That means you will not feel fulfilled if you feel there is nothing here. Like literally, it's the extinction of morality. Nothingness is the extinction of morality. Because morality is not just acceptance of it. It means there is, the morality is literally dualism, the dualism of the psychology of the person. And that dualism is how some part of their intelligence has compartmentalized what is right and what is wrong. So every person is different right now. You know, I may say something, to me it may feel right, to you it may feel wrong, for example. But I'm saying like every person has this inner classification of vision. So it's like it's not just on your office table you have your work organized. You also have behind your eyes, your mind is like a studio for your attention. In one of my poems, I think I remember writing something about this imagery where it was as if the logos was telling a human being, you have a secret office in this universe. And I really don't remember how the poem ended, but it was like this notion that there is a place, an there is an energy waiting to find you. You know, just like how the person is waiting to, like, how poetic would it be? Like that glass of water where the thirsty man ran after, little did he know that glass of water was also looking for that guy, you know? The novelty is like the confirmation of is the intersection of free will and the divine will, where you can say a sort of destiny. So it's like the new, when somebody does something, like when Edison made the light bulb, then his friends were like, yeah man, this guy was destined to make the light bulb after he made it. You see, so there's a kind of state of mind where I kind of simplified it. I said people can kind of practice, or I don't want to say practice this. It's something you really have to pay just uh, look at as yourself, pretty much. The mind can appear just like water in ice form, in a solid state of the substance, material. Your mind literally can just be matter. It can totally ignore the space. You could just be a thing till the end of how long this thing is around. The other option is you realize, all right, so the solid state, the ice melted, and in some sense it became a liquid. And so now there's the liquid state of mind. And the liquid state of mind is when you have 50% of your free will is 50% you're moving the world, 50% the world is moving for you, with you. Therefore, you're still in the communication kind of phase. So the mind is a communicator only when it can notice chaos and order. If you can't notice the edge of the spectrum of the value of what you're speaking about, you literally can't speak about it. Like you can't pinpoint it in your inner realms. So know the walls of the room you're in, and the walls of the inner realms are how you have accepted language to be and image to be synonymous. You see what I mean? By the way, guys, anybody listening, feel free to ask a question. I will here and there kind of like respond to it in the chat section if there's questions in case. The poet Rumi says, I died as a mineral and I became a plant. I died as a plant and I rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear death? When was I less by dying? I shall die once more as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on to that which no mind has ever conceived. So they pretty much, like this dude didn't just believe evolution, Rumi, this poet from 700 years ago, this Sufi poet, he didn't just believe in evolution. He believed in the evolution of individual consciousness into the collective unconscious, because the archetype of the angel was simply just the image of a character that cannot ignore the divine will. The angels were creatures that the divine will moved them. Literally, they had no choice. The angel didn't have free will. Its free will was the divine will. The human being, the archetype of the angel is like the gas state. You know what I mean? So that means it's like either things are 100% known in that solid substance state. Now, let's say in the liquid state, it's like 50% known, 50% unknown. In the gas state, it's like, imagine like water suddenly becoming steam. It's invisible. The visible is returning to the invisible. Okay? But behind your eyes, the invisible is returning to the visible. In front of your eyes, the visible returns to the invisible. Behind your eyes, the invisible returns to the visible. That means the moment the body dies, the mind is reborn. Instantly. Just like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar. Like, I always wondered, could like a caterpillar be conscious in the cocoon? The human being is not like a seed, but I do feel that our DNAs are going in accordance to a field's plan. Like a river, if you throw like an apple in a river, that apple is going to dodge all the rocks of the river because the river is allowing it to dodge. Okay? Like if you throw something in a river, if you've ever done that, like you'll see the water takes it, but the direction of the water allows the apple to dodge all the stones, all the rocks. So in some sense, when you find yourself in a living system, you, in some sense, when you trust the process of your mind before its particular analysis, you, like how it's even a particle. I can't tell you. It's like after you, it's like trust is how you eject out of an ego into presence. I don't know what other way it can happen. It's like trust is the union of different faculties of intelligence. That means, tell me, if a person doesn't have trust, how can they literally live? And the issue is that we are becoming a more advanced humanity, and we're becoming more sensitive and alert to really where we are, you know, as creatures, as human beings, as Homo sapiens. And I think what's happening is simultaneously as we're building the most advanced, like external technologies, we're having an inner metamorphosis on a mass level. That means right now people feel it's hard to change. But I'm telling you, in the future, instantly they will change. Change is going to become old school for them. Right now, they're gonna, in the future, they're gonna laugh one day. They're gonna be like, "Oh my God, our ancestors, felt they had problems. They didn't utilize the skating ring of unknown exploration that the lifetime is. It's literally just like it's like, imagine it's literally like a warrior looking at an army coming, and this army is marching. Imagine back in the day, okay? Imagine back in the day, you're like a general, and you're like, holy shit, the kingdom's about to get destroyed. What do? You try to muster up the greatest defense force and try to have the limit most little casualties. So at that point, you would try to evacuate the kingdom while defending the front of it. I don't know. But like, I'm just saying, after some point, you can't ignore the unknown. And those who befriend the unknown, they actually are realizing, like, let me tell you, any sort of considered experience that is beyond sensory perception, it is all insight into how your mind and your moment are inseparable. A different sort of interest in metaphysics arises when you stop chasing stories behind doors you can't see, and you, in some sense, look at what you are. So that's the difference. If you look at what you have, you are not a person ready for power. You will become a tyrant instantly. But if you look at what you are before you have it. You are that before you have it. I feel that human beings can practice, I call this the eagle technique. This is like if Mr. Within was going to explain eagle vision, like kind of define it in his own way, I would say it's like this. Right now as I'm speaking to you, it's like an eagle on a branch, but there are moments in this talk where I feel like I'm looking at the whole forest from the sky. So in my inner realms, based on how the attention is aimed, I am individual or I am space. Because how can I be the matter when the matter is kept in the space? That means this was my fascination, guys, that I wondered that what if space is not empty, and just like how fish, the fish is swimming and a current hits the fish in the ocean, okay? That fish, if it's going against the current, oh my God, it's bad luck. If it's going alongside the current, oh my God, good luck. But on some level, that current is not the fish, but at the same time, it's not a thing. So at most, I think higher multidimensionality is accessible to not when we think we are a particle But like as Alfred Whitehead says, when we think we are a process, when your life gets the fascination of this unknown process to it, that's you, your value system's different. You're like, how can I be upset about the past when novelty is standing in the room? You know? That means anytime the person's attention has gone on an inefficient version of yourself, it's like all those moments that you as a human being have looked down on yourself, guess what? That was also the same time where you could have looked up. You could have looked up. If I had a time machine, I would go back there and shout at myself, you had freedom, relax. But at that time in my youth, I couldn't see it. I was too caught by the web of my own desires of what I felt life should be. That means it's like when you stop telling, uh, when you see life, it sees you. That's all I can say. That means if a person, their whole life, the most spiritual experience they ever get, they just get a feeling like the plant, like the life of the universal sector is aware of them and they're aware of it. That's even that tiny micro feeling is enough. That is like I can't tell you. It's not a. It's like a quest. The question is in time and space, but the answer is not. So all those people who go trying to answer the question eventually come to a domain where it's the inconceivable, and I created the term the language threshold. You know, that term means you have an experience that can't be put into a concept. It can't exist as a concept, but it's happening in some sort of line of sight, whether inner vision or outer. So, anyways, guys, it's just I'm trying to make people aware that your life has a bunch of axes, and these or axi, I don't know how you say, but these axes are dualisms. So that means how you have accepted the idea of good and bad, how you have accepted the idea of the simple and the complex, how you have accepted the idea of the known and the unknown, how you have accepted the idea of, for example, mastery and the novice. You know what I mean? Like all, like it's about your mind is in charge of something, and maybe that thing is not a thing. Maybe evolution was like we were trying to wake up from matter as a field of being. Who knows? I feel like um, I'm more inclined to that view I just said to you. So, anyways, find the stillness of the soul, which means ultimate contentment with all moving phenomena. That means when no moving phenomena in your moment bothers you, you are the stillness of the soul. Then the movement of the I was about to say baddie, guys, instead of body. With the movement of the body, the movement of the body, you have to abide by the program of literally trying to get by and survive in this world. That means in no way I'm telling people you shouldn't survive. This world is like, think of it this way. In front of your eyes, life is a puzzle. Behind your eyes, you are the puzzle, you know? So anyways, guys, that's the end of the talk. The Q&A is open. Anybody who has a comment or question, the microphone is in the void now, accessible. Anyways, guys, be aware of the worlds you live in and be aware of the worlds that live in you. And realize that the human species is going towards the multidimensional. Don't fear the multidimensional. The unknown is the first multidimensionality, really. All children feel this. When the individual consciousness arises, it's like the same unknown you feel when you open any door you've ever opened. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.